It is the time between the dawn of faerie and the dominion of men. It is also the time of Smaug the dragon. But it is also the time of a reluctant hobbit, and his name is Bilbo Baggins. Hello and welcome to the Friday Fantasy Show from the Bottled Imp, exploring the realms of fantasy. My name is Ken Boyter, and today we're going to be taking a look at, well, I should say listen to, yes, it's one of the classics. It's The Hobbit. Obviously, you probably know that it's written by J.R.R. Tolkien, and this is the BBC adaptation. Oh yes, it's a radio play. Now, this was recorded and way back in 1968 by the BBC, and it was put out between, I've got the dates here, September 29th to November the 17th. So it was over 8 episodes, and they were all half an hour long. And I've got here the precise time. It went out at 8:30 p.m. as well. So imagine that. So I think, you know, if you knew about the novel way back then, because the novel actually came out in 1937. You would probably, and you loved the novel, you would probably be so excited that this was going to be adapted for radio, and you'd be able to hear it coming into your living room, and you'd be settling down and listening to the tales of one reluctant hero, or should I say one reluctant hobbit, yeah, Bilbo Baggins. So we all know the story, don't we? Well, let's just see how well the BBC has adapted this. Yes, the Hobbit radio thing, as Julian has quite rightly titled this. The setup of the radio series follows the plot of the original novel, but it's actually the revised 1951 version very closely. Tolkien did make a few changes from the original novel when it was published way back in 1937. And in this radio adaptation, though, there is one exception where there is a tale bearer, or the tale bearer, in other words, a narrator. And the narrator, you know, introduces us to the scene and to the, you know, the setup of the radio, of the actual story, I should say. And interrupting and also embellishing the story is Bilbo Baggins. And so that's quite a nice little touch to begin with, because you kind of think, because when you read the book, there's a very narratory voice that carries on all the way through the novel. So it was nice that they actually decided to keep that voice into the radio series all the way across all of the 8 episodes. So what is the story? Well, for those of you that don't know the story of The Hobbit, it is all about a reluctant hero. As I said, it's about Bilbo Baggins, who is a hobbit. Now, hobbits, they love their home comforts. They love a warm fire. They love hearty food and ale. They love singing. And do they love singing? I think they love singing. They love partying at the very least. And of course, they love fireworks, as you probably know if you do know the story. Well, especially Lord of the Rings, I should say. Anyway, so he lives a very quiet life in the Shire, and it's all very rosy and cosy. But unfortunately for Bilbo, it is interrupted by a wizard. Yes, you've guessed it. Gandalf has knocked on his door, and Gandalf is there because, not necessarily for a social call, although that is always nice, but it is because he wants Bilbo to go on a quest. There are some dwarfs that they kind of want revenge because they have had their land decimated, their home, kind of destroyed, but also taken over by a huge, fierce dragon called Smaug. And the dwarfs want their treasure back. Now, the leader of the dwarfs is a little dwarf, I should say a brave dwarf, quite a fierce dwarf. I guess he is little, isn't he? He's a dwarf, called Thorin Oakenshield. And he has managed to gather a party of fellow dwarves who all want to fight for his right to claim back his kingdom, because he is actually royalty. So that is the quest. And where does Bilbo fit into this? Well, Gandalf was asked by Thorin to actually find a burglar. They need a burglar because they want to find a way into the mountain, into the Lonely Mountain where their actual kingdom is, because dwarves, as we all know, they like to live underground, preferably in a mountain, where they can hoard all their vast treasure. So they need a burglar because they want Bilbo to sort of break in and steal this precious stone that has got magical properties, and therefore they can claim their kingdom again and resurrect the kingdom that they once had, that was once glorious. Now, as you can imagine, Bilbo, he isn't a thief. That's not actually his trade. He just wants a quiet life. So he's like a bit perplexed of why Gandalf has volunteered his services. But for, probably against his better judgment, he does kind of agree to go along. He kind of gets forced into it, if you like, and a contract is signed. So off he goes on this huge adventure. Now, this is presumably one of his first adventures too far out of the Shire. And so you can imagine that if you've got a quest set up, you have, the actual book isn't that long, but Tolkien manages to pack a lot of themes into this. When I was, reviewing this, I was starting to think about, what kind of themes does Tolkien really discuss in this? And I've written quite a few. And I think that one of the main themes that, for me, that comes across is the companionship. And you've already got the companionship in the dwarfs. They already know each other. They been around together for, they've got the banter. They know each other's weak points and strengths. And so you've got that companionship and that sort of, we're going to follow our man to the end of days. There's a cause worth fighting for. And then you've got an outsider who has joined the company, who has joined the companionship, the party. And so Tolkien explores that view of when you've got a tightly knit group of people, and then you have an outsider that's been invited in, although cautiously. It's how does that friction pan out? How does that outsider integrate themselves into that little group? So I think there's about 12 of these dwarves, and you've got yourself a little, mini sort of community. And so it does explore that aspect of them and us, and can a community welcome in a stranger and actually fully embrace them even though they've only just come into the party. So you have that all the way running through, and the companionship deals with betrayal. It also deals with as I say, the outsider, but then suspicion creeps in as well, because obviously if you've got an outsider and you don't fully trust them, then you are going to be suspicious. And then another theme is hope, because this is a long adventure. They go on this, a lot of them, the dwarves are very hearty. They've obviously been adventuring and they're used to fighting, but not all of them are, but they've got skills. Bilbo, on the other hand, hasn't. So he is totally out of his comfort zone in this. He's pushing his boundaries. He's basically jumped off the edge of the cliff, and so sometimes he finds himself in very desperate situations he's not used to being in. And therefore, what have you got when everything is lost? What have you got? You either fail or you try to succeed, and then how do you rouse yourself to sort of push on and carry on when everything else seems to be failing? And the one thing that Bilbo hangs on to is hope. He still has hope despite all the numerous setbacks and situations that he gets himself into. He still has hope. So Tolkien really does explore that whole concept of the human spirit and what makes us push on. There's another theme of corruption. Now, there's corruption through greed. Obviously, you can have corruption through a lot of different things, but corruption through greed. As I say, the dwarven king Thorin, he wants the treasure. He wants to reclaim his land. He wants revenge on Smaug the dragon for, taking over his land and decimating it. Now, that seems a very noble thing that want to do. He's doing it for his people, he's doing it for his heritage, he's doing it for his fathers and his mothers, all the people that have gone on before, all of his history, his ancestry. But there is a deep, dark sort of underlying motivation that really only comes out towards the end, and that is the corruption. Is his soul, is what he's doing, is it actually true to what he's saying? And deep down it isn't. He's greedy. He wants power. He wants that treasure. He wants the fame and the glory rather than the actual doing it for other people, the sake of doing it for, a noble cause. He actually isn't doing it for that. So therefore, again, Tolkien explores that theme extremely well. He does it in a very subtle way. Heroism as well. You've got two, well, I mean, they're obviously, with the dwarves, they're all they've got their varying degrees of heroism and bravery. On the one hand, you've got Thorin, who is the king, the sort of king that was, and he wants to reclaim, so he's going to be very brave, and he has to act very brave, and he just is. If there's a fight, he will get involved, and he will do daring things, and he thinks nothing, he's not, he has no fear. And then on the other hand, the flip side is Bilbo, who is very humble, very, he's not really wanting fame and glory and going out there and being brave, he kind of just wants to have pie and ale, which, if I had a choice, I'd probably be on Bilbo's side. So there is that kind of reluctant hero. And the difference being is that with Bilbo, he does go on this, it's a bit corny, but, there is an emotional journey going on here, because he discovers things about himself. He discovers that you don't have to, be a fighter, be a warrior, to be brave. You can be brave in other ways. You can be, emotionally brave. And you can be brave because you're out of your comfort zone, but yet you still adapt and you still change. So you've got that nice oscillation between what it is to be a hero. There's a difference. That it's not just as clear-cut as everybody kind of expects it is. And also personal growth, as I touched on. Because Bilbo's been pushed into situations that he's not really familiar with, and he has to think on his feet. And believe you me, Hobbit's feet are big and hairy, so he's got a lot of feet to think on. Then he can sort of personally grow, because he's out of his comfort zone, and anybody that's gone out of their comfort zone, you have to grow and stretch as a person, and you discover things about yourself that you never ever thought you would, and there's qualities and skills that you didn't think you had. And also you discover things, if anyone's gone backpacking around the world, you discover things about other people. So it's not just your own personal growth, but you discover your views and opinions might change of human nature, or in this case dwarven nature or elven nature or whatever race it is. So there is that whole aspect that runs through it with Bilbo's character arc of this personal growth. And then the final thing that struck me was warfare. There is this, you've got always in the background the Thorin talking about, the battles and how the dragon, just decimates everything, and war, and they're very a warring nation as such. And they're quick, they're hot-headed, they're quick to sort of get into a battle. They don't shy away from warfare. And the book kind of does come up, and the radio play does come up with the battle at the end. There's the battle of the 5 armies, and that is goblins, there's the Rargs, there's also, I don't know if I pronounce that right, I can never pronounce that one right, versus the men of the Long Lake. There's the elves of Mirkwood, and also the dwarves on and near the Lonely Mountain as well, and the great eagles of the Misty Mountain. So you've got this huge battle that takes place right at the end. And so Tolkien himself, he wrote The Hobbit in 1937. He had been in the war, in the Great War in 1914, and so he'd seen firsthand, up close and personal, what it is to be in a great battle, in a war, where ultimately, surely it's pointless, surely it's meaningless, surely this fighting is just crazy. It's a stupid situation to sort of determine and resolve issues. Surely there's a more peaceful way. And that is reflected in Bilbo's actions and thinking and personal growth right at the end. I don't want to give any plot spoilers away, but Bilbo doesn't do what you think he's necessarily going to do. As for the characters and the actual radio play, wow, they really did a beautiful job. The characters are so well realised. The actors that are performing it, remember it's voice only, so they, in some respects it is that harder, because you've only got the voice to get your character across when you're portraying these characters. Beautifully portrayed. If you've seen the film, the more modern films, they they don't do just as good a job with their voices as they can do, you know, with all the physical features as well. They're engaging, you actually care about the characters, they're well defined, they're believable, and you really want to know what happens, and you know, and when they are in jeopardy, you do worry about them. So they all are brilliantly brought to life by the actors. So overall, I thought this was such a charming radio production. Superb acting. It captures the spirit and the charm and the essence of the novel. It's exciting. You've got, and because they stick to the 1951 version very, very closely, fans of the novel, you won't be disappointed. They didn't make any kind of horrible choices that cut your favourite character out or anything like that. It's lean, it's tight, and there's a lot packed in there. The sound effects are brilliant. The music is really good. I really enjoyed it. I have listened to this on a number of occasions now, and every single time I find something new with it, and it's just lovely to exist in that world. So I can't recommend it enough. It's beautifully done. This is how a fantasy adaptation should be done. So there we go, the radio adaptation of The Hobbit. The Hobbit radio thingy, yes. I really enjoyed this. There's a lot of charm, there's a lot of joy to it, and I was really surprised. It wasn't until I started sort of researching, you know, the actual radio play, because I just, you know, normally I just get something, I watch it, I play it, or I read it. I don't really research into it because I want it to be fresh to me. When I researched it and found out this was recorded back in 1968, I was amazed because it still stands up. It's not clunky, the pacing is very quick, and I thought it was recorded basically in the 80s or 90s. It was, you know, that good. It was very contemporary. So if you love the book, you will love this radio adaptation, and I'm sure if you've got any children that like listening to radio plays or audiobooks, they will love this. It is a whole family thing. All of the family can gather around and you can listen to this together. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, we do have a Facebook group as well, so you can go to the Facebook and search for the Bottled Imp Fellowship. Click the join button and we will add you in. And also remember to subscribe to our channel. And if you know people that love fantasy, get them to subscribe. Share our videos, share our Facebook posts, and remember to keep it unreal, especially if you've got big hairy feet.